to get to the beginnings of the camera industry and the single lens reflex, we have to go right back to the beginning of time, really, because lenses and the concept of a thing called the Camera Obscura, which is kind of like a camera without film in it, was known about since about 500 AD in China in the East, and passes on through into Greece and into Europe as the Camera Obscura. And the Camera Obscura was, I suppose, first came into prominence in the early 17th century, around about 1600s, and it was used in the middle of the century, towards the middle of the century. It was used by painters and artists to trace the perspective of their drawings. And so what the Camera Obscura was, first of all, it started as a room with a hole in it, and so the light would come through the hole, which was the aperture in the wall, and it would shine into the room, and the image would be inverted upside down. But you could see a picture on the wall. And so eventually they made boxes which were like out of wood, and I suppose at first they just had a plate of glass, ground glass on the back, but then they had a mirror in it, and you could look down because you didn't want to be bent over looking at the back of the camera. And so they wanted to look down, and also to be able to trace the outline, you would put the paper, I suppose, onto the glass and trace through it. And so when photography was first invented, a photographic process, chemical process of glass plates coated in gelatine and impregnated with chemicals, when this was first created, in order to make the first camera, they simply used one of these Camera Obscuras, just got one of these and adapted it into the first camera. So the first camera was, if you like, probably a single lens reflex, although the plate camera, the early plate camera, is simply the box without the mirror in it. Okay. It may well have had the mirror the first, we don't know. And so the idea of the single lens reflex camera goes way, way back. So the good thing about that was it wasn't patented, so people could take the idea and run with it. And so it was a good idea, and many people developed cameras based on this principle. And they were large cameras initially, bulky, awkward to use, and it was only later on that the first 35mm versions of these were produced in Dresden, okay, by the Exakta company. Now, to get to why Dresden created the first of these cameras, we have to understand the origin of where this whole industry of precision engineering and lens science comes from. And so I'm just going to take a pause and then we'll touch on that subject. Now, if you look at the map of Germany, you'll find that Dresden is on the one side, and right on the other side of the centre of Germany, you'll see Wetzlar, which is where the Leica camera came from. And this was Ernst Wetzlar, you might have seen this written on the lenses. And so if you draw a line between these two places running from east to west or west to east, you'll see that it passes through a number of important places in Germany, and this is the heart of Germany. You've got Dresden, then you've got Jena, then you've got Weimar, and then you've got Eisenach. Those are the main ones. And then after that, if you go off outside of Thuringia into Hesse, I think it is, you've got Wetzlar. And so the Leica, which a lot of people see as the pinnacle, if you like, of German engineering, and it's they call it in West Germany. You have to realise that it was only West Germany after the Allies divided it in two. It was really Wetzlar was really part of this central amalgamation, if you like, of technical industry, high precision industry that was all evolved and all together. And the most important centre, if you like, out of which this all came was the University of Jena. And so Jena is the key to the whole place. And when I visited Jena for the first time, I felt it was a very special place, and it has there a planetarium, and the planetarium is a place which is filled with the most complex three-dimensional collection of cameras, and this can project into a three-dimensional space the stars in the heaven. And this was the invention, if you like, of Jena University together with the Carl Zeiss Foundation, and it has never been even attempted to be made anywhere else. All of the planetariums are supplied by this one company. Nobody else even bothers to try to make them because it is so technically beyond what a normal person can think. And this is because Jena has a special quality, the land of Jena has this special three-dimensional quality, that the people are able to think in three-dimensional space, more so here than anywhere else in the world. Now, every place in the world has its specific faculty, if you like. Certain things come out of the east, certain things come out of the west. And if you try to move this stuff around, you'll find that it doesn't like it. It doesn't like, for example, if you try to make cameras in the wrong place, physical place, they just don't get made very well. And the people who, not only the people who are, you can't even send people there who were good at it. It will actually take on the quality of the land itself. And so it's a special place, Jena, and I want to talk a little bit next about the formation of Jena University and the Carl Zeiss Foundation, how that all comes together. Now, Carl Zeiss, in the 19th century, wanted to build microscopes, the most precise microscopes. And to do this, he set up a small workshop with a small amount of capital loaned to him by his brother. And he started to manufacture high precision microscopes, as best he could at the time. But to improve them, he realized that he didn't really know enough. He was more of the engineer, businessman side of the thing. And the greatest man in the area coming out of Jena University was Ernst Abbe. And Ernst Abbe, A-B-B-E, I don't know if you say Abbe or Abbe. Abbe means father, Father Ernst. And so quite appropriate for the kind of man he was, because not only did he create the greatest innovations in lens design, formulating the limit of lenses, that they were dictated by how large the aperture was, how sharp they could be. He worked out the scientific formulas, mathematical formulas, for the limits of precision that could be accomplished, and then found ways to bring that into reality. And so he was the theoretical genius, if you like, behind Carl Zeiss Foundation, and he couldn't do that on his own either, because he needed somebody who could deal with the chemical properties of glass, and that was Otto Schott. And so between the three of them, they created the wonderful Carl Zeiss company and foundation. Not initially the foundation, first of all the company. It was separate companies at first. There was Otto Schott, who was the glass maker, and Zeiss, Ikon made, I think we're getting too beyond that. The trouble with the whole thing is that the names change all the time. So let's just call it the Carl Zeiss Works, if you like. And the Carl Zeiss factory and works was based in Jena. And when it entered into camera production, the cameras were coming out of Dresden, and it opened a factory in Dresden called Zeiss Ikon, and that's where they produced the Contax rangefinder camera in Dresden. And so Carl Zeiss was always an East German company. It was never a West German company. It was always East Germany, and we call that in English, we call that the GDR for the German Democratic Republic, or the DDR is the initials for the German, Deutsch in German, for Germany, version of it. And so to understand that this is all part of the place Jena, this is why after the war they ended up using this name, Carl Zeiss Jena, because Jena is everything, and if it isn't made in Jena, it isn't any good. It's as simple as that. It's not the real thing. Okay, now I missed my topic, so we have to go back a little bit, back to the formation of the university at Jena, because this is the origin out of which all this lot came. Right, now, when the Holy Roman German Empire became corrupted under the Emperor Charles V, he imprisoned one of the electors, the Elector of Saxony. And whilst the Elector of Saxony was in prison, he had this idea to form a place of freedom, of learning, where it could gather free thinking and all the great minds together to find a new way forward out of this predicament of the problem of the restricted mentality of the Roman Catholic Church and the corruption that surrounded it. And so when he eventually became free, he petitioned another emperor, I think, and got the go-ahead to create the new university. And he called this university the Samana, because it was on the banks of the Saale at Jena. Okay, so that's the origin of it. And it was, important thing is it was to create a place that could house the new thinking, the new ideas that were not connected to the old sort of bad fake religion that had become the order of the day, that Protestantism was trying to get rid of, but could provide a place, a fertile place where new more sound, modern ideas could come out, more scientific, if you like. And the important thing, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but the important thing to know is that Goethe and Schiller, which were some of the greatest minds of the 18th century and early 19th century, came out of this place. And Goethe was from Weimar, I think Weimar, and Schiller was part of the University of Jena, I think. And they actually call it now the Shiller University. They hold Schiller in such high esteem. He was a poet, surprisingly enough. And both Goethe and Schiller were literary people that wrote literary works, but they also, Goethe was a scientific man who studied colour, and a lot of the Goethe's study into colour would have been, passed on as part of what Ernst Abbe's, he was like the father of Ernst Abbe, was coming out of that sort of Goethe, Schiller kind of environment, which formulated. And there was many others. You can look it up on Wikipedia if you like, to see more about the great minds that came out of that university. And Ernst Abbe was a great scientist, yet he was also a reformer, a socialist reformer, and his ideas of socialism were that the company should look after the welfare of the people who were working in it. It shouldn't just exploit the workers, it should be a home, a permanent place where people could achieve their aspirations in life and in work being a major part of life, and not just be we're in it for the money kind of thing. And so it was quite the opposite of what was coming from by the internationalists of the Industrial Revolution that were created the factories, if you like, which were just starting to come then. Yeah. And so the workshops of Carl Zeiss were not factory kind of environments. They were environments where the people working it were craftsmen, and they had their own like little workstations, their little desks, so they were all together, working together in the same room. And they would move the objects around and take possession of them and build them. They used to build, I think initially they used to build the entire microscopes themselves. Yet when it came to camera production later on, they used to build, I suppose, parts of the camera, and then they would pass that set of cameras on to the next person after they'd done their bit, make sure it was all working, and the next person would add their bit and so on, until the finished camera was produced. It went from workstation to workstation. It wasn't on a conveyor belt kind of system, which eventually it turned into. It's a little bit of an overview of the origin, if you like, of the place. Now, the foundation, the Carl Zeiss Foundation, was not created by Carl Zeiss. Carl Zeiss died, and it was created by Ernst Abbe, who was the great reformer, social reformer. And it was really to protect the integrity of the business. And his idea was to give it to Jena University. That Jena University would hold the ownership of the company, and the company would then be able to continue to operate and not be taken over by the globalists, the internationalists. And so that was his idea, but they ran into legal difficulties trying to do that, and so they created what's called a foundation, and the foundation has certain principles, and I'll put those principles up on the screen for you so that you can see what they are. And so what I'm trying to say is the whole purpose of this video is to show you there's something special about Carl Zeiss. It's not just a business, it's not just a company, it's a complete attempt, if you like, to change humanity for the better and create a perfect working environment. And I think it shows that it actually works, because nowadays Carl Zeiss, or Zeiss company, is at the forefront of all of the chips that we use in all of our mobile phones and computers and everything. None of this could have been made without Carl Zeiss. Carl Zeiss made the breakthroughs that could create the smaller and smaller microscopic precision that was required to make the chips smaller and smaller. And it's only through its lithography machines, which are the most precise optical machines ever invented by man. And nobody else could do that. Nikon tried, and a few other people tried. They're trying to do it in China now. But nobody has been able to do it. It's only Carl Zeiss Foundation that has been able to do it. And perhaps it's because it's a foundation, and that it is built upon generation after generation after generation of successes. It hasn't been bought out by some company and closed down because it's not part of some monopoly and all of the employees left and go and work for somewhere else. And it hasn't had that sort of history. They tried to do that. They tried to do that to it in West Germany after the war. But they weren't successful because all of the great cameras came out, were based on the work of Carl Zeiss Jena, not the Western people. And it's always is and always will be a Jena foundation, even though parts of it are in the West. The heart of it all is still at the Shiller University of Jena.